Today on another life lesson, I'm going to show you just a little, very easy, quick trick you can use when you're baking, because today I am baking for my husband. His birthday is tomorrow, so we are baking his favorite, and that is a pumpkin roll. I'm not going to go through the whole recipe with you. I just want to show you a few tips and tricks for when you're baking literally anything that requires flour, eggs, and sugar, which is pretty much anything, how this can help your baking skills in the future. First things first, whenever you're measuring a solid, that's when you want to use these cup-like things. So kind of another tie into chemistry, which is my background. Whenever you're measuring a solid thing like this, like flour or sugar, you wouldn't want to use this. However, a lot of people make the mistake of using one of these to measure out liquids like oils and water. If you're going to be baking, you want to make sure that your liquids are in the correct measurement in comparison to your solids. That can mean the difference between a really dry cake or a really moist and delicious cake. So, whenever you're measuring a liquid, make sure you use something that has graduated lines on it, kind of like your kitchen's graduated cylinder, if you will, for those of you that know a little bit about chemistry. And you would measure to the meniscus, we're going to go over that in a second, in one of these kind of jars for liquids. Whereas for solids, there's also a little bit of a trick for how you put the solid in the cup and not compacting it so tightly. For the recipe I'm making today for the pumpkin roll, I need 3/4 cups of flour. So I do 3/4, so 3 of these quarter cups individually. And the way I do that with the flour is not by scooping and compressing the flour, but I put the cup in the bag and kind of shake the flour into the cup, if that makes sense. Let me show you. So as opposed to doing this, this is the wrong way to do it. Do not do this. Do not do a scoop and then press. A lot of people do that and they'll press it. And you'll notice that that's super compact. So now you have a ton of flour in there, and that usually means you end up with really dry cakes because there's way too much flour. Look at how hardly compact that is. That's really, you don't want it to be like sand. What you want to do, however, is put your cup down in the bag, kind of like that, where it's loose and flowy. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's loose and flowy, and then you kind of shake the flour into the cup so it's loose. Notice the difference. Notice how it's super loose on the top. Now this would be a correct measurement for a solid in baking, so a loose packed 1/4 cup of flour. Now that might be different with some recipes for sugar where it specifically says a compact cup. That's when you really want to push all the sugar down in there and get the full cup. But with flour, this is generally how you want to do it. Again, you put the cup in the bag and then you kind of shake the flour into the cup. You're not scooping, you're not compressing. Notice the difference. Look at how loose and wobbly it is on top. That would be the correct way to measure flour. So check out the weight difference of a compacted 1/4 cup of flour. So we're looking at about 45 grams versus the loosely packed 1/4 cup of flour. We're looking at 34 grams. That's a huge difference. So what's this meniscus thing I was talking about? A meniscus is the bottom of a bubble when you're measuring a liquid in a glass. So when you're looking at a line, if you need, for the recipe I'm looking at, I need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. I'm not going to measure from the top of the line, but the bottom of the liquid that's in the jar on the line. Let me show you a picture to make more sense of that. When you're measuring it in the glass, you'll notice that if you look at eye level at the glass, that some of the liquid kind of pulls upwards. You don't want to measure from the top of the pull upwards, you want to measure from the bottom at whatever measurement it is you need. So I need 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, and the vegetable oil isn't going to pull like this quite as much as the water does because it's hydrophobic, meaning that it fears water, whereas water in itself has this cool property where it is, it's hydrophilic, it loves itself. So water itself will be attracted to the glass through hydrostatic forces. So it actually creeps up or crawls up the glass like this does in a bubble. And so you want to measure the bottom of that bubble and not the top in order to get a correct measurement for your baking. So I need 1/4 cup of water And I overfilled it on purpose so you can see where the line is, where that meniscus is I was talking about. See how the water pulls up on the corners right here? So you wouldn't want to measure from the top of this, but from the bottom of this bubble. So notice that I'm off just a little bit. I have a little bit more water than I need, but I'm looking at the bottom of this line, not the top. The bottom of this line, again, is called the meniscus in chemistry, and is a very useful little trick to use when you're baking at home too. There we go. After pouring off some, that's looking a lot better. Notice again that I'm looking from the bottom of the bubble on the water at the quarter mark, not the top. Now I have a 1/4 cup of water measured in my graduated baking glass. Now with the vegetable oil, that bubble is not quite as defined as it is with the water, but I still go a little bit above the line so that it's measured correctly if there's any kind of pull on the glass or distortion of the light through the glass, so that I get a correct measurement up to that 1/2 cup mark for my vegetable oil. Also notice that I'm looking at this line all the way down on my knees, eye level, looking at the line, not standing up looking down on it. You gotta do your squats to get good measurements in baking. Just saying. And just as another side note, if you're baking with sugar and eggs, you always want to cream those two together. Happy baking, and I hope this life lesson will help you bake chemistry style.
No ducks, no glory.